Hello, everybody. Milton Davis here. It's Saturday night on July 11th, and I'm going to do a reading tonight. I'm reading a story from the Eda Blessed collection. This is basically a collection of short stories by the main character, about the main character, Omari Kett. And the story I'm reading tonight is called Assassin's Choice. To give you a little background on this story, Omari Kett was a street urchin born in the streets of living in the streets of Sadi Bar. Because of a series of bad circumstances, he ended up having to join the Mikajan, who are the mercenary force that protect the ships and everything like that for the Kiswala, who live on the coast of Kakanga, and they are basically traders and merchants. This story actually takes place after Omari Kett has left the service of the Mikajan and is basically working on his own as a freelance mercenary. So let's hear Assassin's Choice. The city of Berrima lay on the natural boundary between the grasslands and forests of southern Hyset. It was a region of large farms and thriving plantations, the foundation of the incomes of those who lived there. Many Hyseti and others came to the city seeking honest work. Many, but not all. Omari spun to face three robbers that trailed him into the inn. He thought the owners would protect him, but they did not want any part of what was about to happen. They disappeared into the back of the establishment while the customers looked away. Apparently, ruffians were well known, and no one wished to be on their bad side. Omari was a stranger that was too loose with his money. No one cared if he lived or died. The men attacked in unison, their swords drawn. To their surprise, Omari spun and ran at them. At the last moment, he fell lengthwise to the floor and rolled. The men tripped over him, falling to the stone floor. Omari was on his feet before they could recover, chopping all three men with his swords on the base of their necks, killing them instantly. He crouched, looking for more attackers, his eyes meeting those of the stunned inn patrons. Satisfied he was safe, Omari searched the dead men for valuables. Apparently, it had been a slow day, for their pockets and pouches were empty, save for a few cowries. The swords might be worth something, so he took them and then sat at the nearest table. Two inn workers dragged the bodies outside. A nervous woman came to his table. "What will you have?" she asked. "Beer," Omari replied, "and a bowl of sorghum if you have it." The woman seemed to want to ask another question, but thought better of it. Omari reached into his pocket. He was running low of money, and his prospects for employment were few. Hyset was a rural land, and few people needed his skills. At least he was in Berrima. The region held a number of prosperous farms with owners wealthy enough and hated enough to need protection. The fight might be a good omen, he mused. Word would spread how he handled the thieves and would probably result in an offer. He would take anything that came, for he needed the calories. The woman returned with a bowl of beer and a smaller bowl of sorghum. She placed down the items, then lingered at the table. "What is it?" Omari asked. My my master would like to know how you were paying." Omari gave the woman one of the swords. "He can sell this. I'm sure it will suffice." "Thank you, boy," the woman said. She took the sword and hurried away. Omari wasn't sure if it would cover the meal, but he was sure that the servant and the owner were too afraid to argue with him. The beer was weak and the sorghum was adequate. He finished the meal, then left the building, searching for a safe place to sleep for the night. He was inspecting an alleyway between two family compounds when he heard someone approaching him from behind. "Stranger," the person said. Omari turned to see a short man dressed in a red robe that fell to his knees. His head was shaven on one side, indicating that he was a messenger. "What do you want?" Omari asked. "I've been sent by Bois de Juma to invite you to his home. He has business he would like to discuss with you." Omari smiled. "If you don't mind, I was about to sleep for the night. I will meet Bois de Juma in the morning." "The Bois has authorized me to offer you shelter for the night," the messenger said. "I know whatever the Bois has will be more comfortable than your current arrangements." The servant peered over Omari's shoulder into the alley. Omari grinned. "Lead the way." He followed the messenger through Berrima to an impressive compound resting on top of a hill overlooking the city. The base of the hill was surrounded by fields of sorghum, yams, and fruit trees. They trailed up a winding road to the crest of the hill, entering through an elaborately carved gate. Omari recognized the design. The gates had been created by Oyo craftsmen, a sign of the Bois' wealth. The cost to have them carved and transported such a distance was substantial. The messenger led him into the home and into a room within the veranda. As the messenger promised, it was a much better arrangement. The modest space contained a small bed with a worn headrest. There was a nightstand at the head of the bed and a chest at the foot. A wax candle, pitcher of water, washcloth, and black soap rested on the nightstand. "Excuse me while I announce your arrival to my bois," the servant said. He scampered away, entering the bois' house. Omari inspected the room while he was away, testing the bed and looking about for any valuables that might have been left by the previous occupant. His inspection was interrupted by the return of the servant. "Since you have accepted the bois' hospitality, he has decided to delay your meeting until the morning. He wishes you a good night." Omari nodded. "And I wish him the same." Omari dropped his gear, then stretched out on the bed. The bois most likely heard about the fight in the tavern and wanted to make use of his skills. If all went as planned, this room would be his home for the foreseeable future. He'd stayed long enough to earn enough to travel to Mali, where he was sure to find more work. Fez and Mali were always at odds, which meant constant employment for a skilled mercenary. Omari washed up with the pitcher of water on his nightstand, then settled in for the night. The morning came too soon. Omari woke groggy and sore. He was massaging his shoulders when a servant entered his room. The woman wore a white tunic with a thick beaded necklace that matched the beads adorning her braided hair. She shared a pleasant smile with Omari. "The bois has requested your company for breakfast. He will meet you on the veranda." Omari nodded, then waved the woman away. He dressed and proceeded to the veranda, leaving his weapons behind. Bois de Juma sat at the table, his hands pressed together in mourning supplication. Omari waited until the bois finished before clearing his throat. Bois de Juma looked up and smiled through his voluptuous beard. He stood. The man was a head taller than Omari and just as wide. He wore an emerald silk robe that covered his strong shoulders and hung loose about his body. "Welcome, Omari Ket," he said with a deep voice. "Please, join me." Omari took a seat at the table. Servants swooped in as if perched nearby, filling the table with plates piled with savory meats and delicate pastries. Omari could barely recall sitting before such a feast. "I think you were expecting a more dignified guest," Omari said. "Not at all," the Juma replied. "As you can see, I am not a small man, nor is there anything small about what I do. Your presence will prevent me from overindulging. Please, eat." Omari obliged, trying to pace himself but failing. Everything was delicious. Even the water seemed to be better than water should be. "So, Omari, how did a man such as you find himself in our humble city?" "What do you mean by a man such as me?" "I heard about your exploits in the inn. It's obvious that you're no ordinary loiterer." "I wish there was a good answer," Omari said. "I go wherever there's an opportunity." "Then you must be lost," the Juma said. "I wouldn't say that," Omari replied. "I'm sitting here before you." "A most fortuitous circumstance. If not for your altercation in the inn, you would be sleeping in an alley." "Eda Blessed," Omari said, his mouth stuffed with pastries. "Let's get down to business. You seem to be a man that is good with weapons." "I am," Omari replied. "Who do you need protection from?" The Juma took his time eating the pastry before answering. "I don't need more bodyguards," the Juma replied. "I need a special talent for a special task." Omari drank the last of his water, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "What do you require?" "I need you to kill a man," the Juma said. Omari placed down his cup. "You have the wrong person. I'm no assassin." "You just killed 3 men," the Juma said. "I was protecting myself," Omari replied. "And I'm sure you killed many more during your time as a Mikojan. For pay." The Juma glanced at the tendril of his tattoo that ran to his wrist. Omari started to object, but the Juma had a point. That was my work, he said. I have never hunted down a person to kill them. This is more difficult than I expected, the Juma said. Let's get to the core of the matter. I will pay you 1,000 mickles of gold, 500 up front, the rest when you return with the man's head. Omari picked up a piece of bread and chewed it slowly to hide his shock. 1,000 mickles. With that much gold, he could return to Sadibar and buy his safety. Who is this man you want to kill so badly? Omari asked. Johans, the man shouted. The servant that brought him to the Juma's compound appeared with a rolled up parchment. The Juma nodded toward Omari, and Johans handed him the parchment. Omari unrolled the document, revealing the sketch of a man's face. There was nothing that stood out about him, except for a small scar over his eye. Who is he? Omari asked. Atika Sanusi, the Juma said. What did he do to warrant such a high price for his death? Does it matter? The Juma asked. It does if you want me to consider your offer, Omari replied. The Juma sighed. He stole from me. And for that he must die? The Juma jumped to his feet. He stole my daughter. The Juma shook with rage, veins popping to his neck as he gripped the sides of the table. Omari watched as he regained control of his emotions, then sat. I'm sorry. It's been 5 years since I've seen Samira. In truth, I'm not sure if she's still alive. How did this Atika end up with your daughter? Atika came to me as a slave, the Juma said. He was a good worker and a loyal man, or so I thought. I allowed him into my home and around my family. That was my mistake. Unbeknownst to me, Atika had taken a liking to Samira, and she to him. The Juma stopped to take a drink of water. When I discovered what had occurred, I reacted immediately. Atika was chained and beaten. I contacted the local slave merchant to arrange for his sale. 2 days after his beating, he was gone, as was my daughter. Are you sure she did not leave on her own accord? Omari asked. You ask insulting questions, Omari Ket, the Juma said. Of course she did not leave on her own. Even if she did, it would be unacceptable. My daughter must come home if she is alive, and Atika must die. Do you know where they might have gone? Omari asked. I sent men in every direction, the Juma replied. No one could find them. It was as if they rolled away on an Impundulu's back. Omari worried his chin. This land was unfamiliar to him, and if people who lived there all their lives could not find this errant slave and the slave master's daughter, his prospects weren't much better. The Juma had to be desperate to ask him. I accept, Omari said. I'll stay here for a few days to get my bearings, then I'll set out. How long do I have? As long as it takes, the Juma said. I will cover your expenses. Send a runner when you are in need, and I will supply it. This deal was getting better every second, Omari thought. Just give me my payment and I'll begin, he said. Johans! The servants appeared once again. He carried a bag which he handed to Omari. The weight alone told him what he needed to know. He opened the bag and grinned at the pile of mickles inside. Omari counted them out to confirm. Satisfied, he closed the bag, then stood. The next time I see you, I will have the head of Atika Sanusi, Omari said. This I promise. I hope so, the Juma said. Omari left the Juma's house, bouncing on the balls of his feet. This was his best payment in months. He would look for this Atika for a few weeks. If he did not find him, then he'd be on his way. 500 mickles were more than enough for his needs. He could care less if the Juma ever saw his daughter or Atika again. Omari went back to the inn. The owner scowled as he entered. I will not serve you, she shouted. You don't have to, Omari replied. I came here to ask a few questions. He reached into his bag and took out a gold piece. He tossed it on the counter. The innkeeper's eyes went wide as she scooped up the nugget into her hands. What do you wish to ask? The innkeeper said, never taking her eyes off the nugget. Where do I find the slave merchant? He lives on the east side of the village. It's easy to find. It's the only large house in the district. That and the smell. Omari nodded, then set out for the Eastern District. The slave merchant's compound was easy to locate, as the innkeeper had said. The stench of human captives were overwhelming, so much so that Omari was forced to cover his nose and mouth as he neared. He hoped he could meet the merchant without seeing his hapless victims. Although he knew that slavery was a reality in Kakanga, he despised it. He knocked on the compound gate. The sound of the gate being unlatched was followed by the squeaking of its hinges as it opened. A bald man with ragged teeth wearing dingy clothes stuck his head through the gap and glared at Omari. "What do you want?" he said. "I've come looking for the master merchant." The man maneuvered his head to look behind Omari. "Where's your wagon?" the man asked. "I'm not here seeking slaves," Omari replied. Then go away," the man said. "We're a business establishment. We don't have any time for empty barter." The man was about to close the gate when Omari grabbed the beast around his neck and dragged him through the gap. The man squealed like a trapped warthog. Omari slammed the gate against the man's head, knocking him silent. "I'm here to see your master, and you will take me to him. Understand?" "Help me! Help me!" Omari heard the clatter of men with weapons approaching the gate. He shoved the gatekeeper into the ground and extracted his weapons. This assignment had barely begun and he was already in trouble. He thought of returning the Mikkels to Dejuma, but he couldn't imagine giving up such a large sum. So he waited for the attackers to come through the gate. When they did, he had to fight to keep from laughing. The gatekeeper's rescuers were a collection of elders carrying rusted swords and spears. They burst through the gate, then stopped abruptly upon seeing Omari. They looked at the gatekeeper sprawled on the ground with a growing lump on his head, then back to Omari. "We don't have to do this," Omari said. "All I want to do is meet your master. Your friend decided to be difficult. Look where it got him. But at least he's still alive. I can't promise the same for you." The rescuers looked among themselves, waiting for someone to speak. Finally, the youngest of them stepped forward, his spear shaking in his quivering hand. "What do you want with our master?" the man asked. "I'm looking for someone, an escaped slave. I think your master can assist me." "Come with us," the man said. "No," the gatekeeper said. He sat up, rubbing a knot on his head. "You must protect the compound." The man glared at the gatekeeper. "We are," he answered. "We are taking this man to Boatipo before he kills all of us." The men formed a sorry escort as they led him into the compound. To his dismay, Omari walked between pens of captive humans. Their conditions were deplorable. The fact that there were so many meant business was not going well for Boatipo. They crossed the compound and entered the veranda. Boatipo was working in his garden, gathering fruit from his pomegranate trees. "Boatipo?" the man said. "Did you kill the intruder?" Boatipo asked without turning around. "No, Bois," the man replied. "Well, did you at least capture him? He might sell well in Watandu." "No, Bois," the man said. "He's standing here with us." Boatipo's back straightened, the fruit falling from his hands. He turned around slowly to see Omari Kett standing before him. "Ah!" Tipo dropped to his knees. "Please do not kill me, Mikajan," he pleaded. "I will give you all that I have." "I'm not going to kill you," Omari finally said. Boatipo jumped to his feet, a relieved grin on his face. "Then maybe you'll consider working for me." "A bit too late for that," Omari replied. "I've been employed by Blah Denjuma." "Curse that man to the cleave," Tipo said. "He is the spawn of Darilla if there ever was one." Omari wasn't interested in what Tipo thought of Denjuma. "I have a question for you. If a slave were to escape, where would they run?" Tipo shrugged. "It depends. Many think they can hide in the nearby cities, but I always find them. Others try to run to Sadiba. It's a better chance if they can hide there, but it's very far. But now many go to Kinja." "Why?" Omari asked. "Isn't that where many are captured?" "It used to be until that witch Nubia appeared," Tipo said. "She and her damned militia have made business most difficult." This was going to be harder than he imagined. The thought of taking the 500 Mikkels and heading south crossed his mind again. But if he was heading south, he might as well take a look at Kinja. Is there any place in particular an escaped slave in Kinja would go?" "Bashada," Tipo answered. Omari knew Bashada well. It was a Kiswala city with a bad reputation. He normally would steer clear, but not only would anyone most likely not recognize him there, if they did, they wouldn't care. Thank you for your time, Omari said. He walked away. Wait, Tippo shouted. A journey as arduous as that one you are about to take would be much easier with servants. I happen to have a few that would be most helpful to you. No thanks, Omari said. I'll manage. You'll think different if you run into Nubia. Omari smirked. I'll take my chances. Omari was relieved to be away from the slave compound. He returned to the tent, renting a room for the night. Renting a room for the night. He made sure to secure his door well. The owner had more than one reason to kill him in his sleep and rob him. His sleep was restful, despite the threat. Omari woke the next morning, paid the innkeeper, then went to the local stable and purchased a decent horse before setting out for Kinja. He stopped in a small village just outside the borderlands to replenish his supplies, then crossed into the country known for its verdant farmland and vulnerable people. He followed the main road to the first village he encountered. As he rode past the first farm, farmers immediately ceased their labors and ran toward their compound. Omari chuckled. They probably thought he was some slaver. Soon afterwards, he heard the clanging of a bell and his mood changed. He knew when a warning was being sounded, which meant warriors would appear soon afterwards. Omari reined his horse about and galloped away until he reached thick brush. He dismounted, then ran into the bush. His horse was on his own. It was too big and too noisome to hide. Omari pushed as deep as he could into the bush. His pursuers appeared moments later, armed with spears and swords. There's his horse, a man shouted. He must be in the bush, another answered. Omari watched the men approach the bush, and his hands tightened on his swords. The man who was the leader stopped them. No, he said. We'll wait for Nubia. We don't need her, one of the others said. She has trained us. We know what to do. Still, we will wait for her, the leader said. There's no reason to risk our lives when she is nearby. Omari had no idea of Nubia's skills, but he was not about to wait to find out. The horse had not strayed far. If he could fight his way through the warriors, he could ride away before Nubia arrived. He crept to the forest edge, then burst from the hiding, swords drawn. He bowled over the man before him with his shoulder, stabbing him as he slammed into him. By the time the others recovered, he was halfway to his horse. A spear struck the ground beside him as he reached the horse. He jumped up and landed on the horse's back. The startled animal snorted, then ran before he was secure in the saddle. Omari clambered around the horse as throwing spears whizzed by. He finally settled onto the horse, then dug his heels into his sides to speed his escape. Something hissed by his ear. He turned to see a woman holding a long bow, taking aim at him. Shit! Omari kept his eyes on her, hoping his timing would be precise. The woman released the arrow and Omari dipped. The projectile streaked over his torso. He decided at this point that if the man he was seeking hid in Kinja, he would remain hidden. Just then his horse lurched and Omari flew over his head. He twisted about in an attempt to roll but slammed against the ground, losing his breath. He lay on his back for a moment, gasping for air, then struggled to his feet. The horse lay on its side, an arrow protruding from his body. The woman rode toward him, followed by other riders. Omari took out his sword, having no time to load his hand cannon. By the time they reached him, he had regained his breath. He dodged the woman's attempt to run him through with her spear, then grabbed the bridle of the horse of the man closest to him. He jumped onto the beast's back, unseating the rider at the same time. As he turned, the woman was coming for him, her sword drawn. They clashed, and Omari was immediately impressed. The swing of his sword arm was known to disarm most men, or at least unnerve them. This woman deftly deflected his blow, then stabbed at his face. They battled on their horse as their horses circled, each seeking an advantage but finding none. Exhaustion claimed them both, and they disengaged. The other riders charged Omari, their lances drawn. He was a dead man. He didn't have the energy to fight them off. Stop, the woman ordered. The men pulled up short, their spears only inches away from Omari's body. She maneuvered her horse close to him before speaking. You're no slaver, she said. If you were, you would have been dead by now. No, I'm not, Omari replied. Then who are you, and why are you in Kinja? I am Omari Ket, he said, and I've come seeking a friend. Was your friend a slave? Nubia asked. Yes, as I was, Omari lied. Then you are both free, Nubia answered. There are no slaves in Kenja, and those who come to enslave end up food for the Fisi. You are Nubia? The woman nodded. Then maybe you have seen him. Omari gave Nubia the drawing. She took it and studied it before passing it to her men. I don't recognize him. Why would you have a drawing of him? We were very close, Omari replied. Nubia's eyes narrowed. She was about to speak when one of her warriors interrupted. I know him, the man said. His name is Atika. He was here, but he left a few months ago. Omari smiled with mock joy. It's good to know that he's still safe, he said. He was traveling with a woman. She was not his wife, but they loved each other. Her name was Samira. Why did they leave? Omari asked as if he cared. They were safe here. Men came from Hasset hunting them, the man said. We killed them, but Atika was still afraid. He and Samira left. Do you know where they went? Omari asked. To the coast, the man answered. Thank you so much, Omari said. He looked at Nubia. I must go to him, he said. I know the person that seeks him. It is his former master. Samira is his former master's daughter. Nubia's skeptical countenance faded. You are skilled with weapons, she asked. Why? I was my master's bodyguard, Omari said. He trained me to fight, but my skills surpassed those of my trainers. When I heard Atika had escaped, I vowed to follow him. I killed my trainers and escaped. I'm sure they will come after me, just like they came after Atika. Then they will find nothing but death here, Nubia said, just like the others. Nubia sheathed her sword. Go find your friends, Omari Ket. May the ancestors grant you a safe and successful journey. Omari bowed. Thank you, Nubia. He bowed to the others before setting down the road. It was a close situation, but he survived. He would walk to the next village and steal a horse if there was one available. He considered abandoning the hunt again. He shook the pouch with his payment. It was more than enough. But he was intrigued. Atika had fled south to Bashaba, most likely. It would be easy to hide there or catch a dhow to another country. Bashada possessed a Mikajan outpost, which might cause Omari some issues if he entered, but he would deal with that once he arrived. He would follow Atika to the port city, asking questions along the way. At the third village, Omari finally came across a horse worth stealing. The draft horse was big, making mounting it difficult. Luckily for Omari, it wasn't particular about who rode his back, so he was able to ride away with little fanfare. He was well away from the farm before daylight. 6 days of travel brought him to the outskirts of Bashada. Omari needed to ask questions, so he went into his pack for his old Mikajan uniform. It was wrinkled and fitted tight in some places, but it would work against those who didn't stare too long. He would have to make sure he avoided any other Mikajan. Some would notice his old uniform and most likely question him, which would lead to someone getting killed. Omari was sure that someone wouldn't be him. He rode through the tea plantations on the outskirts of the merchant city. So far, he drew no attention. The people he encountered either were preoccupied with tending their fields or struggling with the whims of the marketplace. He was relieved when he finally reached the city. Despite its size, a person that wanted to be invisible could get their wish in Bashada. What Omari hoped Atika hadn't done was catch a dhow out of the city. There was no way he could find the man and his bride if he had done so. He decided he would check the plantations along the way before going into the city, just in case the two decided to seek work in the fields. Omari ambled up the road of the first plantation toward the main compound. He couldn't tell if the workers were hired or slaves, for their clothing was poor yet not ragged. A few of the workers glanced at him, but paid him no mind. He was halfway up the road when he spotted a commotion from his destination. A group of men emerged from the compound. The man in the center walked briskly, followed by 3 others with spears and swords. Omari sighed. He wasn't in the mood for a fight. The man in the center began shouting. What are you doing here? I paid the other man. So the Mikajan were earning extra income, Omari thought. I'm not here for calories, Omari shouted back. I'm looking for someone. Omari and the shouter stood face to face. And why should I help you? My friend will be back if you don't. The man spat at Omari's feet, and Omari punched him in the face. He grabbed his mouse as he staggered back and fell on his ass. He glared at his bodyguards, and the two stood still with fear in their eyes. The man struggled to his feet, holding his hand over his bleeding mouth. I'm going to remember you, he said. I'll remember you all when Rahid returns. Omari snatched out a dagger, then pressed it against the man's throat. Never threaten a man unless you have good protection, Omari said. Now, have you seen this man? Omari handed him the drawing. The man looked at it, then grimaced. What did he do to cause so much trouble? What are you talking about? You're the third man to come looking for him. Omari lowered his knife. Third? Yes. The first man took the woman. That's when I told him he had to go. Then the second man came looking for him. I told him the same thing I'm telling you. I don't know where he is, and I don't care. Did he go into the city? Maybe. I don't know. As long as he was away from me. Omari sheathed his knife. How much did you pay the other Mikajan? You should know. Omari took out his knife again. How much? 100 calories. Omari held out his hand. I'll need 20 more. The owner reached into his bag and took out a leather pouch. He threw it at Omari. Now leave my property. Omari nodded as he turned and walked away. He opened the pouch, counted 40 calories, then smiled. It was enough to get him a good lodging for the night and a decent meal without dipping into his own. He decided to take advantage of the other planters, stopping by their farms and demanding information on Atika. By the time he was done, he had collected 120 calories. Added to what he received from Danjuma, he had no reason to find Atika. But his curiosity was piqued. He would find the man, then decide if he would kill him. Bashada had changed little since his last visit, so it was easy for him to find the hostels. He paid for a good room and a good meal and received both immediately. The hostel owners offered to find him someone that would share his bed for the night. Omari was briefly interested, but declined. He took off his Mikajan uniform and was naked when the chambermaid arrived with his hot bath, accompanied by two burly men who carried the ceramic tub filled with steaming water. The three offered to bathe Omari, but he waved them away. Despite days on the road, he wanted to be alone. The bath was soothing and refreshing. Too awake to sleep, he donned less conspicuous clothes and strolled about the city, working his way toward the landing beach. If Atika had been refused employment on the plantations, he would most likely seek work with the merchants. The monsoons were blowing west, which meant that there were many dhows arriving at Bashada and many laborers needed to unload them. He wandered to the area where the food kiosk was set up and then waited, Atika's image in his hands. The break bell rang not long afterwards, and the workers walked in single file to the food vendors. Omari studied them as they came, comparing each face to the one in his hand. And half an hour later had passed when he saw a lanky man saunter into view, a weary look on his face. Omari looked at the drawing and smiled. Atika, he whispered. He watched the man purchase bread and stew, then retreat to a wall on the opposite side of the beach. He ate alone, which meant he hadn't been working long enough to make friends. By the look on his face, Omari guessed he wouldn't make many. The man was miserable. Killing him might end up being a kindness. Whatever he decided to do, it wouldn't be at the dock beaches. He doubted anyone would miss him, but murder was murder, and the local constables would investigate. Are you going to buy something? Omari turned to look into the face of a nearby food merchant. The woman squinted at him, her hands on her narrow hips. No, Omari replied. Then move along. You're scaring away my business. Omari grinned and ambled away, keeping his eyes on Atika. He knew where the man was. Now it was about being patient. He returned to the city and the marketplace. There he bought a finely made chest with sturdy locks, a box large enough to hold a man's head. He had no intentions of bringing back the man alive, then killing him before Danjuma. A head and some object the planter would recognize would be enough. After haggling with the merchant for the box, he went to the herbalist for herbs that would preserve the flesh. He would probably have to smoke the head to keep it from decaying quickly. He didn't look forward to doing so, but it was necessary. Omari found a merchant selling coffee. He bought a cup, then took a seat by the cart. After a second cup, he returned to his hostel, burning away the rest of the day playing aware with the locals. He wasn't good, but he wasn't bad either, which made for a few good games. The shadow of dusk crept in the hostel, letting Omari know it was almost time. He went to his room to gather his weapons, then came down and paid the hostel owner. He had changed into his Michigan uniform. He worked his way to the landing beach just as the workers were returning to the city. It didn't take Omari long to spot Atika. He worked his way toward the man, the others clearing the way when they saw his uniform. Atika was oblivious to the commotion. He trudged toward the barracks where most workers slept, oblivious to Omari's approach. Omari reached the man. He grabbed him by the shoulders and spun him about. "You're coming with me," he said. Atika said nothing. He turned with his hands behind his back. Omari tied them together, then led the man away. They walked until they reached the outskirts of the city. When they stopped, Atika dropped to his knees. "Finish it," he said. Omari was caught off guard. "Why do you think?" "Because a real Michigan would have told me why I was being arrested and then taken me to the compound. So finish it." Omari lifted the man's face as he drew his sword. "Why shouldn't I?" he asked. "You were paid to kill me," Atika said. "If you are an honest man, you will do it. Then Juma wants me dead, just like his daughter." That Juma's daughter was dead? This was news to Omari. "Did you kill her?" Omari asked. "If he did, it would make his task easier." "No," Atika said. "The second man Dejuma sent did. Dejuma said she was ruined, that no worthy man would be willing to offer a decent laloba for her now that I had soiled her. He said she was better off dead. That's why we ran away. No matter what he thought, she was my queen. I would have never harmed her. And you just let him do it." He told her that Juma changed his mind about her. He was sent to take her home, nothing more, Atika said. "She didn't want to go, but I insisted. Our life was too hard. After a few days, I changed my mind. I went after them, vowing to fight for her. I found her body on the side of the road, not far from Bashada. He killed her and left her there like she was nothing." Tears ran down Atika's cheeks. Omari stood over the man, speechless. A man that would kill his own daughter. Atika wiped the tears away and glared at Omari. "What are you waiting for, assassin? Do it. I'm tired of running. Just get it over with. This is the only way I can be with Samira in peace." Omari took out his sword, then raised it over his head. The pounding on his bedroom door dragged Dejuma from a sound sleep. He sat up in his bed, then rubbed his eyes. "What is it, Johans?" The banging continued. Dejuma grabbed his robe from the bedside, then tied it around his naked body. By the time he reached the door, he was angry. He grabbed the golden handles, then snatched the door open. "Johans, what?" Dejuma stared into the smirking face of Omari Kett. What are you doing in my house?" Omari strode by the man, a square box under his arm. Dejuma's anger seeped away as he imagined what the box held. Omari placed the box on Dejuma's bed. "You did it," he said. "You killed Atika." "I believe you owe me a few miquels," Omari said. "Yes, of course." Dejuma would not normally open his safe in front of strangers, but his elation affected his reason. He pushed aside the secret wall and quickly unlocked the safe. He took the miquels and then closed the safe, hoping the assassin did not notice the combination. He shoved it to Omari. "Here," he said as he tossed it in the bag. "Now let me see his head." Omari opened the box. Dejuma was about to cry out in joy until he recognized the head of Johans. He stumbled back in shock. "What have you done? What have you done?" Omari took his pay, then sauntered toward the door. "Your servant was difficult," he said. "Give me my money back," Dejuma shouted. "You did not fulfill our agreement." Omari turned and smiled. "Actually, I did." Dejuma was about to charge toward Omari when another man entered the room. Dejuma stopped in his tracks. His blood went cold. "Atika!" Atika stood before him, hate twisting his fate. He held a sword in his right hand. "You killed her because she loved me," Atika said. Omari grinned. "See, I brought you his head, and the rest of him too." Omari left the room, closing the door behind him. And that was Assassin's Choice. Hope you guys enjoyed it. That's it for tonight. Hope you have a lovely weekend, and I will see you guys Wednesday. Take care. Bye.